Yes, hello, come on in to the NTT20 Podcast Monday pod, sponsored by Sky Bet, and this week focusing on the Sky Bet Championship, which had a quite frankly bonkers weekend to continue what seems to me to be quite a bonkers season so far. Across the next hour or so, you're going to hear about 5 massive away wins, 4 massive home wins. Genuinely not exaggerating, this is all true. 3 draws, 3 hat-tricks, 2 very enthusiastic podcasters, 1 sacking, and surely, George, a record amount of home fans booing.
Yeah, and a record little amount of tennis balls used in a tennis ball protest.
A dozen.
Well. Yeah.
Just a pack of 4.
Half a dozen, though.
A pack of 6.
Yeah, one of those tubes.
I watched the 12:30 kickoffs and I was flitting between the 3 as I often do. You never see as much as you think and you always miss the best bits of the games you're not watching. So probably best to focus on just the one in future as a little tidbit. But I found them all very, very interesting and intriguing, George. And my major takeaway was that 3 sets of home fans were pretty angry heading into it and were pretty angry finishing the game. We're going to get into all of that and so much more. But one set of fans who are not unhappy at all. Quite the opposite. Preston North End beat Southampton by 2-0 at St Mary's. And that is this week's Sky Bet surprise. The biggest price winner of the weekend with Sky Bet. Preston winning at Saints at a price of 4-1. Was this a surprise? I don't think many Championship observers would say that it was. The game plan was relatively obvious for Preston, and that's not to take anything away from the way that they executed it. Hold their shape away from home at Southampton, let them have the ball, don't give them any easy opportunities, and let them come on to you. The main thing from a Southampton point of view at the moment is to keep Cienza quiet, and apart from 1 shot in the first half, Preston did that better than most teams have done recently. Very lively attacking player, a bright spark for Southampton recently. And then get excited when you win the ball back, because opportunity to break quickly against Southampton tends to bear fruit. And it did so here. They created 2 chances in the first half for Devine and for Dobbin, which weren't taken. They didn't have to wait long for the one that was. Dobbin bundling home to put Preston 1-0 up in the first half. In the second half, with a lot of pressure on the Southampton team, a home fan base incredibly unhappy and making their feelings heard, they did have to ask Daniel Iversen to make one of the most sensational saves of the season so far. That's not one of the most sensational saves of the Championship season so far, just within his own collection, which he is building. This one was quite remarkable. Preston did this without a number of first-team players who were out injured. It was very clear that everyone knew their roles. The motivation level of this Preston side is very, very clear to see watching them. They are confident and they are coherent across all parts of the pitch. And you can't say that about Southampton and quite a lot of other teams in the Championship at the moment. Most of this season, basically, seems to have been a bit of a Heckingbottom masterclass. Preston have beaten Ipswich down from the Premier League last season. They've beaten Leicester down from the Premier League last season. They've beaten Southampton now down from the Premier League last season. Them winning games is no longer a surprise. But this weekend, they were the biggest price winners of the weekend with Sky Bet, winning at Southampton at 4-1 and continuing a brilliant start to the season. It led to the sacking of Will Still George. Didn't last that long at Saints. Hasn't gone very well at Saints. Their league position of 21st with 12 points from 13 games. Not good enough for anyone, really, and he's lost his job.
Yeah, not a surprise, this, I don't think, in any way, because for Southampton to be where they are in 21st is clearly unacceptable, regardless of kind of nuance or outside noise, and that is why I think in this occasion we've got quite a rare scenario where Southampton fans certainly united in the need for something to change, and certainly, you know, the time for Will Still to move on. But generally, I think a fan base, when a sacking comes, especially after a relatively short amount of time, you know, it's only the beginning of November, it usually comes alongside he's terrible, he's useless. And even though there will be a lot of Southampton fans who do feel like that, I've seen the coverage from fans probably being a little bit more well-rounded, like an understanding that the recruitment in the summer, for which, you know, still obviously cannot be held accountable for given the way the club operates, that looked pretty good or quite exciting over the course of the summer, those players do not look up to the quality at the moment to be expected of a team that get relegated from the Premier League. A lot of big money signings look miles off it. I guess time will tell us how much still had to do with that. I guess there is a chance that a new manager comes in and suddenly the players who are underperforming begin to improve, and then we get a better understanding of what has been going on. But from right now, it looks like still has been kind of left out to dry a little bit in that regard, in terms of the expectations being high, but maybe not having the players to do that, and having to rely on what is an incredibly young team. And certainly from a defensive perspective, I think a group of defenders who aren't defenders first, and that has been very obvious in the way that they can see goals. You've got distributors, you've got young players who haven't necessarily had that many minutes, Harwood Bellis being the exception here, but certainly in Edwards, a very, very exciting player who's played the majority of his career at League One level, who, obviously had a good loan last season at QPR, but again, someone who is a very good footballer, and maybe the defending comes second. Harwood Bellis similar to that, and they're all young. And
Quasi
really as well, who's come in and had a very exciting profile, but hasn't looked particularly good. At the other end of the pitch, you've got Downs, who's come in and hasn't looked in any way a player who should command the kind of price tag that they paid for him. Cienz is the one who looks really lively and very good, but even the ones that should be,
Finn Azaz and Tom Fellows.
What was I going to say? So the ones who should be like the...
It's easy to forget, isn't it?
But this is where the whole proven thing just gets thrown out, where it's like Azaz and Fellows have both proven at championship level that they can perform at this level and they're good championship players. However, they come here and it doesn't work. Even Roslev, who's another one that should be a proven player, has come in and hasn't necessarily been up to scratch. It's the squad building looks like it's been done almost complacently, where you let's just get in loads of really good young players and expect them to just kind of gel very quickly together. And similarly, when you've got McCarthy in goal, who has not looked particularly good over the last few games, on top of that, the manager has to take some responsibility, of course, for the results. But when you also consider that the underlying numbers are pretty good, they rank second for expected goals for this season in the league, that is caveated by the fact that results haven't been good enough. So therefore, they've spent way more of games behind or level than they'd have expected to start the season, and we know that game state plays a massive part in this. I still think, when you have a manager who's had done two very good jobs elsewhere in France, where the underlying numbers are good, you cannot argue with the fact that they have, in really important moments in big games, things just haven't gone for them. Even in this game, where the first goal, I'm sure Edwards would like to go back and be a bit stronger in terms of trying to get the ball off Dobbin, but it's like three ricochets that ends up falling into Dobbin's path where it could go anywhere, and Southampton have been desperate for that kind of bit of luck to fall for them in that way. Whereas you see Yander at the other end force that incredible save from Johansson, and that is the third time that Saints have hit the woodwork at a key moment in a game recently and then gone on to concede at the other end. But having said that, the defensive shape here, this was, in Southampton's case, I think there have been games this season you can look at where you can think that they shouldn't have lost that game, or they shouldn't have drawn that game, they should have won it. But eventually, when results are so bad, sometimes it can be the case that performances start to slide alongside it. And I think this was definitely one of those. Because even though Saints were pretty good for the first half an hour here, as soon as Preston asked them any questions, they didn't have any answers at all. And the defensive shape for the first goal, the defensive shape for the chance in the second half that came and I think was well saved. Anyway, but they were, again, just leaving huge gaps in the defensive unit that Preston were able to exploit with ease. And even for the counter-attack goal that came later on, where you can expect it because Southampton are going to throw men forward, but even so, and you probably look at the head coach or the manager for being culpable for that, even if the profiles themselves aren't the best defensively. I think it's a very good job for whoever gets it. I think the underlying numbers being strong helps that, as we're seeing at the moment with Watford. I think the natural variance will mean that whoever comes in probably won't have to do much in order to get some good results. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because there's a huge gap between where Southampton think they should be in 21st, and even if those things I'm talking about had maybe gone Southampton's way, they might still be a mid-table side, which would still have still under pressure. So
I think, because I was quite keen to take a bit more time than I had previously to look in terms of the underlying numbers and particularly the underperformance, and I reckon, I'm interested to hear from Saints fans here, I reckon there's 4 games, you said there's certain games where it's undeniably true that poor finishing has basically let them down.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the third game of the season against Stoke, that's probably true there. The Swansea 0-0 a couple of weekends ago, the most obvious one. And then since then, the lack of confidence affected their finishing against Blackburn when they were 1-0 up and missed 2-1 through Armstrong. And probably that Bristol City defeat as well, which came after that one. That still leaves a lot of games where they have just been quite poor, to your point.
And should be mentioned as well that in the Wrexham game early on in the season, it was Wrexham's poor finishing that kept them in the game, and they ended up winning it 2-1.
Yeah. And they've drawn 6, and I reckon on balance of play, 4 of the 6, they were just drawn games, like no major complaints. Maybe the Watford one you'd look at, the 2-2 draw, where they probably had the better of it. And the defeats to Hull and to Preston here, just no complaints possible, really. So, yeah, it is an interesting one. It's not been every single game where the underperformance has let Will Still down, his strikers in particular. But on 4 major occasions, and particularly recently, it's just he hasn't been able to do what's necessary to make his strikers finish chances in those individual games, and it's just got so much worse. I mean, you say it's a great job to come into, and obviously I agree. Any job where you come in and you've got one of the top 3 budgets in the league is a great job to have, because it weights the dice in your favour. You've got a better chance of succeeding than your peers in most cases. But there is that graphic that Sky flashed up over the weekend. That's Southampton's managerial appointment since Sport Republic took over the club in 2022. Nathan Jones, who
very
won...
cheeky, adding the caretakers in there.
Yeah. Those don't count as appointments.
Yeah.
Sky Sports. Nathan Jones with 1 league win. Sayas, who was interim after he left, got 1. Russell Martin won 27 league games. Simon Rusk, interim, didn't win 1. Ivan Juric won 1 league game, and Will Still, after 13, has won 2. There is, and this is where you and I very rarely dig much deeper, because it's very difficult to analyse. There is a cultural issue, it seems, at Southampton at the moment, and has been for some time. Like, even the promotion campaign wasn't like a sparkling promotion campaign, was it? Did they concede 60 goals in 46 games? They felt like a beneficiary of that couple of seasons where it kind of felt like you just came down, you had more money than the rest of the league, and you kind of went back up again.
Yeah.
But everything's flipped this season, and for whatever reason, the teams coming down have needed to offer more, and they are one of the 3 that haven't really so far. So culturally, it seems like there's a bit of an issue, and with the confidence of the players on the floor, you know, there was a chat on NCT20 Squad about, like, I think they need to focus on, like, more of a motivator than more of a Martin or a Still. These guys being chucked in the same bucket as, like, datery or possession-y. I'm not really sure, but there's a vague idea that people have that they need a sort of man-manager motivator just to take the good players, give them more confidence first and foremost, and I guess maybe put them in a simple structure. But I'm not sure who those managers are.
Also, I just don't understand. It seems like there's an idea that you can't be like a modern thinking analytical manager who's also a motivator.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's too many skills for one person to have.
But I think in terms of it being a good appointment or a good job for someone else, often when you have an appointment now, the first manager is held to the standards that you create when they're appointed, right? So when Will Still was appointed Southampton manager, they were a recently relegated Premier League side with a top 3 budget, and the expectation was that they would at least mount a challenge to return to the Premier League. And that has stayed the same up until the moment that he's sacked. For whoever comes in now, that changes, right? Whoever comes in now, the expectation is improve us, make us better, ensure that we're not going to be anywhere near this bottom stuff, and try and get as close as we can towards the top end. So just by the fact that you're not Will Still, you get a different set of, you know, KPIs effectively, and that in itself, especially given, as I say, the numbers suggest that they are nowhere near as bad as the league position. Albeit, I would say that, you know, from a watching brief, it's never particularly looked that convincing with Saints this season. But if I was a manager, I'd be looking at, you know, this is, if you want like something that ticks all the boxes of a job that you want to take. You know, a club that's like perception is they're down, you know, they're probably like as low as they're going to go. Underlying numbers are okay, budget's still high, expectations pretty low. Like, this is one I'd be, you know, I'd much rather take this job, say, than one of the ones that'll come up. Well, you know, the Wolves job that should come up this weekend. Like, at least with this one, you're not on hiding to nothing before you even start.
Yeah, we move on to a similar situation in many ways, a gleeful away end. Hull City's fans who are loving life this season, dancing at Carrow Road as the home fans, those that were left, booed and chanted, sacked in the morning, get Manning out, get Napper out, get them all out. And honestly, Norwich have lost every single home game they've played this season. It's the 3rd of November, and they've lost every single home game they've played this season. 6 in the league, 1 in the cup. I asked Opta today how often, or rather when the last time was, a team had lost 6 home league games to start the season in the EFL. Johnny Cooper, who works for Opta, replied to say, outside the top flight, only the last 3 occasions. One was Forest Green 23-24. One was Watford 90-91. And one was Newport County in 70-71. So 3 times in 55 years before this, a team had lost 6 home league games to start the season. In terms of the match itself, like, one of the funniest and best things I've seen this season happened at kickoff, when Hull took kickoff and John Egan moved towards the kickoff taker, Gelhardt, as if to give him some instructions. But it was a decoy, and Egan actually ran up to the ball and just shot from kickoff. And I must admit, for some reason, I feel like you shouldn't be able to shoot from kickoff. I still feel like you should need a touch before you shoot.
I agree.
But you don't. You can score direct from kickoff. And Egan had a go. It went over the bar. It wasn't that close, but it was pretty funny, quite exciting. And I'd like to see more of this, because I'm sure there are some players arguably better placed than John Egan to potentially score that exact shot from halfway if there's a keeper that's sleeping a little bit.
I'd love to know how it came to being his responsibility.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, his idea, like a bit like when you win a pen, sometimes you're like I won it, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
Like he in training was like, should we do this? He's like, well, if you want to. Even Charlie Hughes, his centre-back partner, I would back him to do that way better. Or do you think they did like a Soccer AM style, like not crossbar challenge, but who can do the best shooting from the halfway line?
On Friday training.
And
yeah. You're probably right. Maybe it's just John Egan. Maybe he's the one, the halfway line guy. Norwich hammered Hull in the first half and played some really good football. Sargent had a big miss in particular. He's at full stretch trying to divert a Makama flash across the 6-yard box. It's one of those for Sargent where it gets logged as like 0.85 XG chance, so he gets a lot of stick for missing it. I sort of think with those, when you're at full stretch, you just get a toe on it. I'm not that critical of it, really. It's one of those where if Sargent hadn't touched it, if he hadn't reached it, he'd get less stick because it doesn't even register as a shot, and you just go like, oh, that was close.
Gaza.
Yeah. But there was some good zip to Norwich's play. Makama and Sargent combining really nicely. Some chances from set pieces as well. Schlupp hit the bar. Schwartau put one wide when well placed. Like, it was just a good first half performance. It was 0-0 at half time, and you're thinking it's time for Norwich's first home win. And then a minute or two into the second half, a goal kick from Kovacevic, basically into the wind, is starting to get blown like back towards him by the time it reaches halfway. The big tree, Matt Crooks, heads it forward. Joe Gelhardt takes a great touch into space, burns Harry Darling, and then finishes past Kovacevic, and you just hear the noise from the home fans. And you see basically the whole team just shrinking. After that, it's mostly fear and loathing at Carrow Road. Norwich did manage to almost score one of the goals of the season when they were 1-0 down, but again, the shot was poorly placed. And then with 25 minutes to go, Hull just realised what they needed to do, and the game plan was brilliant to finish the game. They pressed really high. They didn't just let Norwich build into their defensive third and just bunker in and hope for the best. They pressed Norwich high. They closed them down at the back. They put pressure on the defenders and the holding midfielders, and they disrupted them time and time again, made the most of the mistakes, and JB made it 2-0. So from a Hull point of view, but for a Charlton goal in midweek in injury time, it would be 5 wins in a row, which is an unbelievably impressive run and incredibly notable when you consider they've conceded 11.2 XG to their opposition in those 5 games, and they've picked up 13 points. But they are just really fun to watch on the break. I love the way they attack. Even with McBurney out, they've done a good job. And Gelhardt, with 6 goals, he's scored in 4 straight games, is starting to really make good on the promise that everyone's always known Gelhardt has. He's had the most shots on target in the Championship this season, most shots on target per 90, 5th most successful take-ons, 3rd most goal-creating actions, 7th most carries into the penalty area. So this is a guy who at the moment is one of the league's premier goal threats and one of the league's most dangerous ball carriers, and that's a hell of a combo. Liam Manning, as we record, has not been sacked. The owner, Mark Atanasio, was pretty explicit last week. He's come over to England to see what's going on, and he said there are no plans to sack Liam. That was before this game. He said, we hired him because of his record as an English football coach. We think maybe that was lacking last year. And it's a challenge for us with all the players that we're bringing in. So having someone steeped in English football and has succeeded everywhere was important. He said, I try to take lessons not just from professional baseball, but also from money management. If we have an investor who's a really good investor for years, but they have a bad quarter or two, we don't sack them. Manning has coached over 250 professional games with success everywhere that he has gone. He is without doubt failing right now, but he is completely committed and determined. We're going to give him some time to succeed. It must be really hard from an owner's point of view, and I really find it difficult to criticise owners who desperately try and provide what we all say managers often need more of, and that's a bit more time, and that's a bit more patience. And to make a big explicit statement like that on BBC Radio Norfolk as well, credit to him for doing like an interview like that, and then to have this Groundhog Day, like probably their best performance of the season in the first half, and to lose it 2-0 and to be there sitting there when you hear what the fans are doing. Really tough spot.
It's yeah, and you know, unlike the conversation around Wilston and Southampton, here this is a case where the Norwich fans have just totally and utterly lost the faith in every single person involved, and think that the manager's boss, the owner, everyone is doing their job badly, and that's a nasty position to be in. And I messaged you after the game here saying, like, for Ben Napper, for the owner, who obviously want to be data driven, they want to trust the evidence, and you know, their processes are going to be led by data. To be under as much pressure as they are at the moment and to lose a game like this is just the worst possible situation, because on the one hand, of course, you have to, at some point, even if you think that Manning's the right person still, and even if you think he's being unlucky, you've got to appease your fan base at some point. Like, you cannot allow for things to get as toxic as they're getting. It's not fair on the fans, it's not fair on Manning, it's not fair on anybody, really. But the flip side of that is that you've identified someone who you think is good at their job, who's done 2 good jobs previously, and you put in a performance against a team who are currently in the top 6 in the first half that was just totally and utterly dominant. Like, from open play, from set pieces, it's just a case of not being able to put the ball in the back of the net. And Manning even said afterwards, he was like, I can't do it for them. Like, you know, at some point we've just got to score. Like, we've got to find a way to actually score. And there's no doubt that if they do score, and they could have scored well more than 1 goal in that first half, it's probably going to be a different game. For Hull to score their first shot on target is typical. Again, defensively really poor. I think Darling has looked, he was kind of the brighter spark in the defensive unit early on in the season. Now he's just looking, from a defensive standpoint, really poor. Duffy came in and had a good chance in the first half, but again, defensively wasn't really at it. I felt like he probably could have worked a bit harder to try and get back to, Gerhardt's shot wasn't particularly powerful. Had he been, busting a gut to get onto the line, he maybe could have done something about it. But what do you do if you're the decision makers? Do you think to yourself, this just isn't worth it? It isn't worth it. Because also the other thing is, even if you sack a manager who you think is good, who you think is just getting unlucky, and you think if you stick with them, things will improve, that doesn't mean you can't still make a good appointment, right? So sacking, it doesn't have to be a mistake to sack them, because if you go and hire someone else who's good, then no one will ever know what would have happened afterwards.
Yeah.
But that, the interview that you mentioned there has clearly created a situation where I feel like it's unlikely he's going to get sacked. Well, I felt like it was unlikely he was going to get sacked over the weekend. Obviously, a defeat away from home at Sheffield Wednesday on Tuesday night, or Wednesday night, midweek, whenever it is, could change that, given the kind of situation at Wednesday right now. But they're another team who I would say are a couple of breaks away from being much better than they are. But again, certainly miles away from being a top 6 team, and that's probably what the expectation was to start the season.
Just so shocked basically at how bad they are defensively. Like, if you'd said to me pre-season, Manning's Norwich are going to be a bit ropey going forward, but keep a fair amount of clean sheets, 0s and 1s, and they'll start the season with a lot of draws. And if you said to me it'll be a bit underwhelming and the fans won't be enjoying it, I'd have believed you, because I've seen that before with Manning teams. That feels like how I expected it to be, to build from the back first. And instead, defensively, they are just all over the place. Ipswich got their first away win of the season at Loftus Road, a 4-1 win against QPR. They scored in the 68th second of the first half and the 58th second of the second half, which always helps. Egley with his first real flash of pure quality, I'd say, on the right side of Ipswich's attack with a step over, got to the byline, crossed for George Hurst to head home. Beat Burrell, did equalise, tapping in after the goalkeeper had parried an Ilias Chair long shot. 4 goals now for both Burrell and Richard Kone. Really nice stepping up to the league from those 2 League One strikers from last season. And then it was the Marcelinho Núñez show. A free kick into the far post. Nardi, the QPR keeper, taking that fatal step to his right. It was still a lovely whip from Núñez, but you would expect the goalkeeper to save that. Frustrating. And now a bit of a sequence of goalkeeping errors, you'd say, from Nardi, which is frustrating the QPR fans. Hurst scored another towering header. The ones that kind of make you wonder whether we could see more of that from Hurst. He has scored about a quarter of his goals in his career with his head, but he does look at this level like he could be someone that offers a lot more in terms of aerial goal threat, and we saw it here. And then Núñez again with a free kick, this time deflected off the wall and wrong-footing Nardi for 4-1. So I'm just sitting here wondering, will that give Ipswich the injection of confidence necessary to take decent performances, sometimes dominant performances, and to take them a bit further? I feel like we're talking about a lot of teams who aren't horrendous in some ways, but who are just on the wrong end of confidence at the moment. And Ipswich are part of that conversation, even if slightly less drastic than Southampton and Norwich. And you wonder if this could help see them click a little bit. QPR, just so hot and cold, aren't they? It's reflected in their results with 5 wins, 5 defeats, and the 3 draws this season. This was not one of their best days. Derby have won 3 in a row. They went to Bramall Lane. They won 3-1 thanks to Morris, and Morris.
Morris dancing through the Sheffield United defence. Yeah, this was just a bit of a shambles for Blades, really.
This was the great comedy farce of the weekend, I think.
Yeah,
so many funny moments from the neutral's point of view.
You know, it felt like Chris Wilder was starting to kind of get his his Blades side back on track when they were 2-0 up against Preston, and then from that moment they conceded 3 without reply, and then were 3-0 down at home to Derby before Callum O'Hare got one back late on in this game. The first goal coming from a set piece, Morris heading home from close range from a corner. The second goal after half time was just a total and utter shambles, really, from a Sheffield United point of view, coming out 1-0 down at home at half time. Getting the ball forward from kickoff, the ball forward into City Peck, who just hadn't realised that Carlton Morris had run forward to try and press the Sheffield United defensive line, and then had just taken his sweet time to trot back, obviously thinking he wasn't going to be needed, and Peck basically slid him through like a defence splitting 25-yard pass back towards his own keeper that Morris then got onto, and it was Ben Mee who was trying to get back. You know, Morris and Mee isn't a particularly fast foot race at championship level. I don't think there are many defenders that Morris could kind of tear away from, but he did it, and the finish was sumptuous, to be fair. Cooper going down and Morris clipping it over him, as we see so many do now from one-on-one situations.
Incredible. That was right at the start of the second half, so the tannoy was still playing "You Fill Up My Senses" as Morris was running clear. They cut, turn that off. Oh, he scored. 2-0.
Yeah. And then a penalty that was won by, well, I say won by, it was lost by Alex Matos, who came on playing at right wing back, which, you know, as someone who watched a lot of Alex Matos last season at Oxford, I can't really think of any part of his game that is suited to that role. Like, he is someone who...
Running?
Yeah, but like running, we're not running on the ball. Like I think with a, you know, if you're playing a fullback, I almost think your like positional discipline is better than your ability to cover ground. And at Oxford last season, and for Huddersfield the season before, you know, he's a human wrecking ball in the middle of the park. He's someone who is able to cover incredible amounts of ground, and very, very good at tackling and very keen to tackle. Very limited on the ball, not progressive in any sense, and quite rash. And so, you know, he had a shocker when he came on. He gave away a penalty. I felt a bit sorry for him. Like he kind of went down. It probably wasn't a foul, but went down in one of those moments with Agyemang behind him. It's a classic case of a defender trying to win a foul. Normally they get given. He fell on the ball and was given a handball against him, which was dispatched confidently by Morris to make it 3-0. Callum O'Hare was Sheffield United's best player by miles in this game. You know, it's a bit of a shame for O'Hare that he struggled to really make an impact last season in what was a very good Blades team, and now in a very poor Blades team. He looks by far and away the kind of best player at the moment and their biggest goal threat at times. And he profited from some kind of pinball in the box, finishing past Zetterstrom. But despite looking okay in the first 20 minutes or so, Blades, And even in Derby's best performances, I would say teams that play against them, because of their style of play, do tend to look good in phases, because they're very happy for a long time to not really have any intention of attacking too much. They pick their moments, and here they did that brilliantly. So Derby, I think they'd won at Bramall Lane for 14 years. Carlton Morris, the hero, he's playing well, looking at a much sharper version of himself than he did last season. And 3 wins from 3 for Derby, off the back of a terrible display away from home at Oxford. And they are, as you said, still looking quite used to see at this point.
Yeah, more points in their last 3 games than they got in their first 10 league games, up to 17th, where there's now a bit of a gap. 4 points between 17th, that's Derby, and Oxford in 18th. There are some teams, the ones that we've just discussed, Norwich, Southampton, and Sheffield United as well, who, the turnaround needs to come at some point, because I don't want to overdo it. 4 points isn't loads, but Norwich are 9 points below 17th at this point, so it makes it less likely that someone coming in and improving the team and improving results, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to fly up the table in the next month or two, because of the way the league table is sort of set up right now. Leicester 0, Blackburn 2. Another one of these games that we had last weekend, where an away team just got the game plan right and exploited vulnerabilities in teams that are expected to be a lot better than they are. And Leicester City are just the latest. A lot of boos here. It's 3 defeats in a row, and Rovers absolutely deserved it. Mavididi scored when he was offside in the first half, and it was one of those where Vestergaard had flicked a header towards goal. It might have been going in anyway, but Mavididi, I thought, well, what if he'd left it? It might have gone in anyway, but actually I think he would have still been considered to be obstructing the goalkeeper Toth, so it probably would have been cancelled out either way. And then Blackburn just waited for their moment, and like so many teams at the moment, making the most of counter-attacking opportunities, having soaked up some pressure. A lot of speed out wide they have, with Alabiosu in particular on the right, and the very speedy Deneve on the left. He got down the left, and his cross was sort of half cut out by Soumare's studs diving in to try and put it out for a corner. Instead, he could only prod it straight to Andri Gudjonsson to score another. An incredible save from Toth, from Mavididi, who looked like he was just going to tuck it in from 4 yards out in the second half. It looked like a really bad finish at first. You just think, how did you not keep that away from the keeper? But the reverse angle showed that Toth stuck his foot out and managed to tow away Mavididi's big chance. And that was a big moment in the game, really, because Rovers go 2-0 up not that long after it. Christensen, the Leicester left-back, was hobbling around, basically could barely move. And Alabiosu just got on the ball, stationary out wide, looked at Christensen and was like, I think if I just burn you down the outside, you basically can't move, and got the cutback for Gudjonsson to finish really nicely into the roof of the net. Maktar Gay almost scored a third at the end. Leicester had crumbled, and from Rovers' point of view, a very solid game plan here. Work incredibly hard without the ball, fly forward on the break, knowing that Leicester just don't like defending that much. And a bit like Preston at Southampton, you get a big save from your keeper at 1-0. And that makes a massive difference. I really like the speed that they had, as mentioned, Alabiosu and Deneve. Missing Cantwell at the moment to kind of knit things together at the top of the pitch, so got quite a lot from out wide. And obviously Gudjonsson, more of a strike partner for Ohashi, arriving when Ohashi's movement had created some space for him on both occasions to score. I love Tronstad at the base of midfield. I think he is one of the most underrated players in the Championship. And just like the movement of this Rovers team, when they attack like this, it's incredible how poor Leicester are defensively, how much of a soft touch they are, and probably more surprising to me, how few good chances they create. It's amazing how often we're talking about Fatawu and Mavididi having sort of wide forward opportunities, and I don't think we've mentioned a single Leicester striker this season, because they just don't get any chances.
They don't have any.
They're trying. The Carranza's trying his best, but he looks miles off it. But I think that's mainly a team issue rather than a player issue, personally. So, big win for Blackburn Rovers. Now we move on to the big home wins, and you're going to see why I said at the top, I'm not exaggerating. These are all big wins. Stoke 5, Bristol City 1. When you consider this is a Stoke side whose last 10 league games had seen 4 single goal wins, 3 draws and 3 single goal defeats, and then they go and blitz a fellow playoff squatter in Bristol City. Chamado rampaging in this game, setting up Mbama with a great assist. Stoke's first shot, 1-0 up. There's a little bit of Bristol City pressure after that, sort of 15 minutes in, a few half chances from corners, and then Radek Vitek makes maybe the biggest goalkeeper blunder of the season so far. There's a ball running through to him. He slides to pouch it. I think it hits his knee and just bounces off straight to Mbama, who takes it very, very coolly. It's a huge, huge error, and it just gave Stoke even more confidence. The Manhoef goal, their third, if you squint, that's like a messy goal from early 2010s. Dribbling in from the right-hand side, 1-2 with the fullback, then coming inside, bounce it off the striker, get it back centrally on the edge of the box, another dummy shot to get a clear shot at goal, and the finish was beautiful. Really loved that goal. Loved the fourth goal. Chamado going full Brazilian fullback and just carrying it miles and scoring an unbelievable individual goal, looking so quick down that right-hand side. Really exciting to see how much he has developed, and still so young, just 21 years of age, someone we've been talking about on the pod for like 6 years, it feels like. What else? They almost scored the goal of the year, but Baker couldn't quite finish. Mbama, very composed to score his hat-trick to make it 5-0, and a Mark Sykes flicked header was a consolation. I think Bristol City were just shell-shocked here by Stoke's most exciting performance of the season. That's exactly what I've been asking to see from them, and that's what we got here. So welcome back to goal-scoring Devin Mbama. Manhoef's goal was brilliant, Chamado, sensational, all very exciting stuff. Quite enjoyed Friday night's game between Wrexham and Coventry. Wrexham winning 3-2, and in doing so, the first team this season to beat Lampard's Cov. Yeah,
I think Wrexham are a team to look out for at the moment after starting the season really poorly. I think it's taken Parky a bit of time, mainly just to work out like the best players, and that's not a big surprise when you consider the amount of players that came in over the summer, added to quite a lot of players that came in January, added to what was already quite a big squad, and there are certain players I think who came in where quite big things were expected. Certainly, Cody being one of them, but also maybe Lewis O'Brien, who came back in the team here and hasn't necessarily looked quite as good as we maybe thought he would do. And certainly Kiefer Moore, who was obviously the best player on the pitch in this game and scored a perfect hat-trick. Right foot followed by header, followed by left foot, and that was thanks to a hat-trick of assists by Josh Windass. And I'd like to know if any player has ever scored a perfect hat-trick with the same assister for all three before, because nice. I can't imagine that's happened very often.
I can remember a Charlie Wyke hat-trick, I think, for Sunderland, where McGeady... They were all identical goals. McGeady crosses from the left and headers. No, not perfect. But that's off the top of the dome. That's as good as I can do. And I think I'm pretty happy with that recall.
Yeah, it's good. Total recall. But it's I mean, when Mason Clark put Coventry 1-0 up, it was completely against run of play, and it felt like there are a lot of people who feel like Coventry this season have been scintillating at their best, but also beatable at their worst, but haven't been beaten yet. And this was a case where it looked like they were going to come under some pressure but find a way to score. But in the second half, thanks to the creative powers of Windass, for the first two assists, he kind of drifted out to the right-hand side and put brilliant balls in for Moore. The first he slid in and hit into the roof of the net with his right foot. The second judged the header brilliantly at the back post. And then the third was a Windass on the left-hand side who slipped a little ball into Moore with a really good left foot to finish across the keeper. And that is why I think the Windass and Moore partnership could be really good, where you've got firstly, Windass is going to benefit massively from Kiefer Moore's ability to hold the ball up and to bring him into play. He'll also pick up loads of loose balls because we know that Kiefer is going to engage physically with all the centre-backs, and they're going to look to hit him, and whether Moore wins it or not, it's going to fall to Windass a lot of the time, and he is as dangerous as anyone is from that kind of 25-yard out territory. But he's also someone who is willing to drift wide. He's also, as we saw in this game, his crossing ability is very good, and they're a very nice mesh of attributes, as was seen in this one. Sakamoto scored late on with a nice strike from outside the area to make it 3-2, but this was a massively deserved win for Wrexham, and I think the last couple of performances have seen a step up, and given how unpredictable and how tight this championship season is, they're only a kind of a win away from starting to really look up and wonder where they can get to. So big win for them, and Kiefer Moore, the third hat-trick hero of the weekend in the championship. Wonderful scenes. Good stat for you on that front, because I think people like stats, and NTT20.com's weekend notes with Sam and Hugh and Matt
Well, they delivered. The first time since September 2012 that 3 players scored a hat-trick in the same round of Championship fixtures, and it's a lovely window back in time. Glenn Murray of Crystal Palace, Craig Davis of Birmingham City, and David the Difference Nugent of Leicester, all scoring on the same weekend. Another thumping home win. George came at St Andrews at Birmingham 4, Portsmouth 0. Blues haven't been great from set pieces this season until now.
Yeah, this is so weird. Do you remember how John Mousinho's Pompey in League One had solved set pieces? They were unbelievable from set pieces going forward, and it's never conceded from any. They conceded from 3 here, and all 3 set piece goals they conceded. The first, a pike diving header. The second, a Iwata kind of glancing diving header at the front post. Then the third one, Clara, kind of a just about diving header at the back post. They were all first contact set piece goals. Like, all of them were not a clearance, not a second phase. All of them were balls into the box. Met first time on the full by Birmingham players and finding the back of the net. And that has got to be a huge worry for Mousinho. And then the fourth goal came from Kesh Anderson, a deflected shot from the edge of the area that went in. That all came after Stansfield had a penalty saved, and then a very kind of strange, I think he was still cursing his luck before when the cross came back into his feet and he couldn't sort them out quick enough to prod home from close range. But this was good from Birmingham. It was kind of what we saw from Birmingham last season in terms of being pretty dominant in every way. Like, they dominated the ball, they dominated the chances, they made their set piece moments count. They didn't concede a shot on target from Portsmouth. But Pompey are the team right now I'm looking at as being pretty concerned about. I didn't really see this coming. Chaplin and Bishop both dropped from this one, which Hugh on our NTT20 group said was a bit of a swipe at the church, which I thought was quite a good line. But it's, they're not the team that we thought we were going to see. They're not really the team that started the season relatively brightly. Finding it really difficult in games at the moment, like second best in most. Some of the summer signings, certainly Swift being one, just not really performing. Some players from last season who looked really good, Dazelle being one, not necessarily performing two. Obviously, injuries playing a huge part as well. With Josh Murphy having made a return from injury, but then absent from the squad here, so we have to wonder what's going on there again. But it feels like Pompey are at that stage now. Whenever you see a team struggling, normally there's a kind of confidence or a calmness, but now Pompey seem to be trying to chop and change pretty regularly to find a winning formula, and that is often a bit of a red flag to me. So they need to work out how to improve. Big week or so for them. They host Wrexham in midweek. Bad time to play Wrexham, I would argue, and then they go to Hull on Saturday, who at least we know defensively give a lot away, even if they are a bit of a winning machine at the moment. But it feels like a big week for Pompey and Mousinho, because if this continues, I think Pompey fans are going to get quite frustrated.
One thing we've always said is that fans know best. Fans know better than anyone. Fans know better than media and journalists, no doubt about it, but fans also know better than managers. And that was made clear at Vicarage Road, where, finally, Watford got to watch a team without Moussa Sissoko or Edu Kayembe playing in midfield. They got to watch a Watford team with Kwadwo Bar from the start, with Rocco Vata, and 2 strikers on top of that. Would you believe it? An old school 4-4-2, and it worked a treat against Middlesbrough. A 3-0 win, and I've got to talk about Imran Louza, because I think he might be the best player in the Championship. I think he might be. I try not to chuck stuff like that around without thinking more deeply about it. I think he is absolutely next level. I watched Watford at Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago. It was towards the end of the Petzolano era, and the team was pretty incoherent, and clearly, as we know now, they weren't big fans of their manager at that time. And Louza was amazing in that game, because Watford were not playing very well for most of the game, and I've not seen this for a while. He was trying to play as a defensive midfielder, a number 8 and a number 10 all at the same time, and was doing it quite well. And you can see what I mean with Watford's first goal here. Louza is Watford's best passer, maybe the best passer in the whole Championship. He is sensational from deep areas, just thwacking balls forward, out wide, into target men, along the ground, in the air. His range of passing is next level, and he plays a pass forward, and then he gets on his bike, and then he finishes from inside the box to put them 1-0 up. And not only is he an amazing passer, he's also scored 5 goals this season. And Loser made a bit of a name for himself by scoring spectacular goals or free kicks. But 4 of his goals this season have come from inside the box. He has added box crashing to his game. And unsurprisingly, because he's technically so good, he's pretty good at finishing first time from cutbacks or crosses. So he's also just that guy who's like, you sometimes play these guys in 5-a-side or 6-a-side. They're just so much better than everyone. And they don't sprint at any point, or at least it feels like they don't sprint at any point. It feels like they handicap themselves by refusing to sprint. But he never seems to be rushed. He always seems to have time on the ball. There's like another level of technical ability and understanding of where to put your first touch, and understanding of where defenders are, how to use your body to keep them away from the ball, and a sort of psychological aspect of being able to play with composure and quality while under pressure that not all central midfielders have at this level, it's fair to say. So that's my main takeaway from Watford is Loser is amazing. And if Javi Gracia can just platform him to this extent, then they're going to do pretty well. It makes sense to have a lot of targets out wide and at the top of the pitch for him to aim for if you're going to get him on the ball a lot. And Barr obviously was a big part of that, scampering down the right regularly, getting in behind down the sides for Middlesbrough. But Kjerumgaard as well is a good target. Doumbia is very mobile at the top of the pitch. Kjerumgaard scored the second with a lovely finish. Doumbia hit an absolute banger that's been given to Kjerumgaard. I think it must have flicked off his head and gone in. He looked a bit embarrassed to have nicked the goal, but I'm sure he would have done. And yeah, I think Watford just nailed this, basically. Caught Borough cold with a really good game plan, good execution, and by the time they were 3-0 up, Middlesbrough were pretty much done and dusted. So a 4th straight league win at home for Watford, who are one of a number of kind of interesting teams in mid-table. They've won as many as they've lost. They've already changed their manager this season. The numbers are pretty good. They're in 10th spot. What will they be in the future? I genuinely don't know, but more performances like this would be very welcome indeed. 3 draws, George, Oxford 2, Millwall 2. You nicked one right at the death here.
Yeah, a funny game this, because Millwall had the better of it, but both of their goals came from kind of bizarre circumstances. The first, Oxford, who've been so good from long throws in the last year and a half or so, conceding from a long throw, was kind of launched into the box by Leonard. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I can't be certain on this, but like for Oxford to let a long throw bounce, given our own proficiency from those areas, was bizarre. I reckon, my theory is that Elek and Brown were both so focused on making sure that Jake Cooper didn't get first contact, they basically just went with him rather than actually watching where the ball was going to go, and it went over all their heads, landed, and Ballo headed home, having already had a decent opportunity about 5 minutes before to put Millwall ahead. Second goal came thanks to the brilliant work of the very in-form and exciting Stan Mills, who ran down the right-hand side, cut onto his left foot, squared it to Brannigan, who scored the latest of his own kind of goal of the season, or goal of however long you want, because he continues to score these amazing goals. They're beautifully struck right-footed shot that kissed the inside of the post and the underside of the bar on the left-hand top left-hand corner to make it 1-1. Millwall were then decent in the second half, but again a preventable goal with Will Volks with a really poor challenge, or really poor clearance I should say, that diverted in the path of Kramer, who shot from distance and can only parry it out to that man Cooper, who ironically the aforementioned centre-backs had kind of completely lost him this time, and he prodded home from close range, and it looked like Millwall would do enough, and it didn't really feel like Oxford were doing enough to get a point out of the game. But again, a moment of real quality from Oxford. Kind of the 2 moments of quality within the game both came from the team who are probably poorest over the 90 minutes. With the Brannigan free kick saved, and then the ball was recycled back out to Dembele, whose cross was deflected into the path of Plaheta, who has frustrated me so much with his shooting technique on so many occasions, but this time just got absolutely spot on, like head over the ball, purely struck, left-footed shot, arrowed into the bottom right-hand corner to spark jubilation for Oxford fans. So, yeah, I mean, a good point from Oxford, coming back from behind twice, showing decent resilience, having kind of stood firm against Sheffield Wednesday last time. Millwall fans will be incredibly frustrated that they couldn't see the game out, and to concede in the 96th minute will irk them, having taken the lead twice against an opposition that I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have made much of, given Oxford didn't do much apart from the 2 goals. But when you score 2 goals of that quality, you probably deserve something out of the game.
Charlton drew 1-1 with Swans. Charlie Kelman putting Charlton ahead with his first goal for the club. Big moment for him, that. And Adam Eder, you could say the same for him, because he's been watching the Viper Zamir Popnik score some lovely goals for Swans this season. And this was his second goal. He'd gone close a couple of times, and it was a really good finish from the edge of the box, 20 yards out or so. Swans famously not a team that create a lot of big chances, so for Eder to score like that was kind of important for them. And then they did create one massive chance right at the end. Josh Key smashing over when very, very well placed. They could have nicked it. They could have beaten Nathan Jones, who has a pretty fun history with Swansea City. In the end, a 1-1 draw. And West Brom 0, Sheffield Wednesday 0 was a match that happened in which Ethan Horvath made some very good saves with a long left arm in particular, and in which West Brom fans did a lot of booing, just like a lot of Championship fans did this weekend. It's all a lot, isn't it? It's very, very entertaining in many ways. We've got a hell of a division, and some people are finding it kind of tough to take. So, hope you've enjoyed this breakdown of a great weekend in the Sky Bet Championship. And George, it's a big week in the EFL. It's the EFL Week of Action. That is designed to kind of celebrate and tell the stories of the football club charities across England and Wales that are part of the EFL. It's obviously something that we are pretty involved with this season, with the sponsorship and partnership with the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundations Fund. You only went to Colchester last Monday. We got some videos coming out on our social channels this week showing some of the action, but you learned a lot about what they're doing down there.
Yeah, I did. I went and attended a session of the Adult Inclusive Use at Colchester United, which is a programme to support adults with disabilities across the local community. And it was great. Like, it was great to meet some of the guys there. As ever, it's always amazing to go to these clubs and see the amazing work that they do, and the Colchester United Community Foundation absolutely are that. They welcomed us into the club. They also had Danny Cowley and Kane Vincent-Young, who came down for the session, which was awesome. Hadn't seen Danny since our Quest days together, so it was nice to catch up with him.
I bet he's great at those sessions.
I mean, him and Kane both joined in. It was actually amazing to watch. The guys all got there. They did some drills to start off with, and then Danny and Kane arrived, and you could see like they're all Colchester United fans, right? So they all like are looking over, being like, "This is exciting." And they then called them in, and they did a Q&A with so the guys, probably 12, 14, 15 guys, with Kane and Danny in the middle. And the questions, as kind of Kane alluded to in the interview I did with him afterwards, were very different to what I think they were expecting, where rather than being generic questions about like who's your hardest player you've played against, or your favourite teammate, or who's the biggest joker, there were questions about anxiety, and there were questions about rage. And I thought it was unbelievably brave of these guys asking these questions to broach those topics. And I think it took Danny and Kane by surprise, but credit to them, they were incredibly generous, both with their time but also with the answers that they gave that were refreshingly honest. And then they played a game afterwards, of which Danny was everywhere. I think he probably had the most touches of anyone on the pitch, and he scored a goal. Kane, the actual professional footballer, decided to sit back and just chill, and just, when the ball came to him, he'd relate pretty quickly. It might have had something to do with the serious mouth injury he'd suffered 2 days before. And then we had an interview afterwards, and you could see, it meant, in that day, you could see that it meant a lot to the guys having those two guys there. A first team player who's obviously racked up loads of appearances for Colchester over 2 periods. The manager there who's incredibly popular, a local guy who's doing well. But the wider picture, and in the chats that I had afterwards, as was the case in the previous stuff we've been to, the previous initiatives we've been to at Middlesbrough and at Wigan, like, this is stuff that is consistently improving the lives of people in the local community, and it's amazing that football clubs are doing this with the help of the Sky Bet EFL Building Foundation Fund.
So it was terrific for George to be able to visit Colchester. I've been to Walsall. We've got more trips coming up. We're making some great video content off the back of it as well. So please make sure you're locked onto our social channels. There'll be some videos from Colchester this week and plenty more over the next few weeks. But this week in particular, just take a little bit of time to read up around the EFL's Week of Action. They're doing an amazing job highlighting the amazing job that so many club charities are doing, all of them really across the country, having such a big impact impact in their local area. So start off on EFL.com, read about the week of action, but also take some time to find out what your club are doing in their local area, because as we are seeing all the time, they're having a massive impact. So thanks to Colchester for having George down there. Thanks to you for listening to this week's NTT20 podcast. We'll be back with a betting show on Thursday. Hope you're enjoying the roller coaster ride that it is the 25-26 EFL season, because we are loving it. Cheers. Go well.